when he was taking care of the James boys, whenever they come in the area, and I don't know how they notified her or anything else, but she knew it, and she would take her buggy, and she would load up with all kinds of food and stuff for them, and she'd drive down to the river, and she would always give them their food, and then she'd go back up to the town and back out to our place and her home place, and there. But the Jesse James has never bothered any of our property. They took no cattle, no nothing, and we was never bothered. That also reminds me of a story about another dog we had, and he was part wolf. He was very much part wolf, great big giant white wolf, and he was beautiful, and we called him Jack. And he got to where, as he got older, he was fine. He was always good with us, always good with us. But when he got older, when he'd hear the coyotes yelling, all of a sudden he'd yell back, and he would sound just like a coyote. And he'd call back to him, and then he'd start walking. He'd go back and forth in front of us if we were sitting out there, in which we did a lot in the summertime. And we'd sit out there on the porch, and he'd walk back and forth, and back, and he'd go so far, and he'd turn around and come back, and he'd go so far, he'd turn around and come back. And then when we went in the house, that dog was gone, and we wouldn't see him. Well, at first it was just overnight, and then as the time went on, he would spend more and more time out with the coyotes. And we got told, they never bothered us, but we got told by other people that they seen a big white dog running with the coyotes. And so we didn't say anything because we figured it was old Jack. And so he'd go and he'd stay for a couple nights, and then he'd come back. And then he went for a week and he'd come back. And he kept doing this. But nothing around our neighborhood was touched. Nothing. But all the neighbors had pigs tacked, this, that, just right and left. I mean, it was uncanny the way they do it. Animals. But they never touched our place. And when finally old Jack, just one night, he just never came back. Never came back. But for a long time, he'd go back, and he was torn between us and the wolves. But he was a beautiful dog, great, big, tall one, and just gorgeous. But that was another little one. And what else is there? The Rough Riders, no, what's that one that carried the mail?
Pony Express?
Yeah, the Pony Express. They had a path that went right through our place. I don't know if our place was one of the stop-offs or what, but we could see the path yet out there. In fact, if I could get up there to this day, I could show you it. And you could see it right from the highway. That's where they went, and that path has never grown anything since that. But that's where they went. Now, like I said, they could have been stopping there because Grandpa Dillery did sell horses to the army. So he raised horses and beef for the army. That's where he made his money. and then that's how the boys got started. When they came over here, they went to uh, they went to Pat and Mike both. They came over on the boat, and they met my grandmother on the boat, my great grandmother, and the McNamara. And she stayed and worked in New York, and they went to Ohio. Then they came back from Ohio, and he went up after he made so much money working with the coal mining. Then he came back and got McNamara and my grandmother, and then they came back, and then they would winter in the South. They'd go down to New Orleans on the boat, and they'd winter down there, and then they'd come up, and then they finally settled up by Goodwin, as it was called, and they bought a land, and it had one of those dirt houses on it, and that's where they lived, and they started, and then they sold that, and they came back, and they moved and bought the land in Jackson, and then that's when they started. That's where they started making their money, and then they just kept buying land and stuff like that, and that's how the Delurys got here.
What happened to all that land?
And it was eventually sold off, and then as it got down there, they sold a lot of it themselves, as Aunt Mary and her brother Cornelius or Con. They sold it all off, and they had quite a bit of land left. They had about 3